5 burning question marks for the Buffalo Bills as things stand right now. Going to talk about that and plenty more today here on Talking Buffalo.
Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo, with your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, for watching, for listening, following, subscribing. I appreciate y'all very, very much. Real quick, before we get cooking here, I want to ask for a favor right off the top. If you happen to be watching this on the video side, and I know the numbers on the video side of the YouTube channel are continuing to go up, which I love that. But if you are watching this on the video side and you got your phone near you, pull it out, open it up, go to either Apple or Spotify, whichever one that you like to use. Go in that search, type in Talking Buffalo real quick, and just click that follow button. It'll take you about 5 seconds, and that's going to help us continue to grow as well on the audio side. So again, thank you for that. Today, we're going to talk about 5 burning questions for the Buffalo Bills as things stand right now. As I record this episode, sometime around lunchtime on Tuesday afternoon. You know how it goes in the NFL, free agency period, things can come out of nowhere. So I'm recording this relatively early on Tuesday. This will be up on the YouTube channel, 10 p.m. on Tuesday night, overnight into Wednesday morning on the audio side for the podcast drop. So I just want to put that out there that things could change sometime between now and then if the Bills were to happen to make a move. But anyway, as things stand right now, these are what I consider anyway, the 5 biggest burning Buffalo Bills question marks. Want to let you know too, before we get cooking with this episode, so this is our Wednesday episode this week. Starting next week, next Wednesday, will be the first of 5 weekly Buffalo Bills mock drafts. We are going to do one every week. Again, starting next week, all the way up until the day before the actual NFL draft on April 25th. Lined up for my first one, and he's also going to do the final mock as well. Very excited about this. I got Bruce Nolan, one of the best out there from Buffalo Rumblings. He's going to join me next Wednesday, and we will talk plenty of Bills draft stuff. And then, if you've been following the show now for a couple of years, kind of the same format that I've been doing for the last few years. We'll talk some Bills draft stuff, some needs, some potential scenarios, how they could play out. And then we're going to open up the PFF mock draft machine and let it rip. And we'll do a 7-round mock draft. Bruce is one of the few guys out there, by the way, that could get into day 2 and even day 3 pretty deep in there and still know plenty of those prospects. So anyway, look for that starting next week and every Wednesday leading up to the draft. But this first one, I will have Bruce Nolan from Rumblings with me. By the way, 10 days away. I saw this on Twitter. You can tell it's springtime. Like, it's actually officially springtime right now. And we're 10 days out, I should say, from the Buffalo Bison's home opener. I got to tell you, man, it don't feel like it today. If you live in Western New York, holy shit, dude, is it cold out, man. It is cold as balls out, windy, snow on the ground. And we're like, what, March 19th, March 20th? I hate it. I hate it. Just when I thought I was done hibernating for the winter, just when I thought I was ready to start getting back out and doing stuff with my life, just another cold front coming through Buffalo, and it's supposed to last all week. So if you're looking for me around town, I guess I will be out and about maybe sometime in early April. Check with me then. But anyway, like I said, I want to dive into this right now. 5 biggest, for me, burning question marks about the Buffalo Bills as things stand today. And let's start with, and these are, by the way, these are in no particular order. Like, this isn't a countdown. This isn't from 1 to 5 or from 5 to 1. These are just 5 random big question marks that I see right now for the Buffalo Bills. And I'm going to start with one that I'm sure is a pretty obvious one for a lot of you, and that is Stefon Diggs. And I think the question right now to ask is Stefon Diggs a legitimate number one wide receiver right now still for the Buffalo Bills? Is he still a number one guy in the NFL when you look at wide receiver units? And let me start by saying this. Stefon Diggs, since coming to the Buffalo Bills in 2020, has put up quite literal historic numbers. I mean, he's rewritten the Bills' record book already throughout his first 4 seasons here, but he's put up numbers historic on a NFL league-wide level. And I'll tell you this, and there's things to criticize him about his play, maybe some of his cryptic tweets. I get all that. And I know some people don't give a shit about that. Some people it gets under their skin. I kind of think he knows that and has a little bit of fun with that. But anyway, regardless, there's one thing I would say about Stefon Diggs is I think what he's done in Buffalo over these first 4 years kind of almost goes, I don't even want to just say under the radar, but almost taken for granted by fans, by media, by content creators. He's been incredible since coming to Buffalo. And for some perspective on how good he's been, Stefon Diggs is just one of 4 players in NFL history to have at least 4 consecutive seasons with 100 or more receptions in a year. There's only been 4 players in the entire history of the league that has ever done what Stefon Diggs has done over these first 4 years in Buffalo. Antonio Brown did it 6 straight times. Say what you will about the guy off the field, complete nutcase, but he had that run in Pittsburgh where he was just incredible. He had 6 straight years with at least 100 catches. Marvin Harrison did it with the Indianapolis Colts, did it 4 consecutive years. Devontae Adams has done it 4 consecutive years and running. And then Stefon Diggs, 4 consecutive years with the Buffalo Bills and running. That's it, folks. That's the list. Those are the only 4 players ever in the NFL to have at least 4 consecutive seasons with 100 or more catches. And I kind of feel like if he didn't have Twitter, if Stefon Diggs didn't have Twitter, or if he had it and he never really tweeted, we probably wouldn't talk nearly as much about him and any controversy, any cryptic tweets that we're always trying to decipher when we don't even know what the hell we're talking about. I kind of feel like that is taken away a little bit from talking about how great he has been on the football field. And even last year, I guess if you look at the season as a whole, really impressive because he had 107 catches for the Bills last year, which, by the way, through all the struggles in the back half of the year, he still finished 6th in the entire NFL in receptions, 107 of them. He had 1,183 yards, which was 13th best in the NFL, caught 8 touchdowns, and ended up with 159 targets last year, which, again, 5th most in the entire NFL. You look at those numbers as a whole, and you're like, well, what the hell are you questioning? Your boy's got 107 catches, nearly 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. Sounds like a hell of a season to me. Sounds like a great number one wideout season to me. But when you kind of peek beneath the curtain a little bit, when you get underneath the hood a little bit, and you look first half versus, like, say, back half, when kind of things change a little bit. Stefon Diggs last year won his last 13 games without having 100 yards. And that includes the playoffs, too, by the way. So 13 straight games without getting 100 yards. During those 13 games, he only had 68 catches. Josh Allen only connected on Stefon Diggs, or with Stefon Diggs, I should say, on 61% of his targets over those last 13 games. So that's worrisome. And you can make a fair and reasonable argument that by the end of the season, the last handful of games and into the playoffs, you could say Khalil Shakir and hell, maybe even Dalton Kincaid became more reliable, productive passing threats than Stefon Diggs. And that's not good for your number one wide receiver to only have 68 catches over his last 13 games, none of them going for 100 yards. Now, that's not to sit here, of course, and say that's all on Stefon Diggs. There's a lot of shit going on last season with the Buffalo Bills and that offense, of course. An offensive coordinator change midseason, that had a dramatic effect, at least on the production of Stefon Diggs. Because as a whole, I think everybody would agree that the Bills' offense got better once Ken Dorsey got fired and Joe Brady took over because they were more balanced. They ran the football more effectively. Josh Allen started running the football more with his legs, using his legs. More on that in a couple minutes. Guys like Kincaid started to get more targets, started to step up. Khalil Shakir definitely did. James Cook was a threat coming out of the backfield. So there's a lot of factors. There's only one football. So that's not necessarily to say, Stefon Diggs completely fell off a cliff because his numbers from week 13 on indicate that. Not really the case. But the production definitely went down. It seems like you go through all those stats, and maybe the one that concerns me the most is that Josh only connected with Stefon on 61% of his passing attempts over those last 13 games. That's the stat of all those that I don't like. And I'll tell you the other thing I don't like this about Stefon Diggs straight up. And again, not entirely his fault, but Stefon Diggs has been completely silent, at least in terms of production, in their last 3 elimination playoff losses. 3 straight years, man. The Bills have been eliminated from the playoffs, and Stefon Diggs' stat line has been a joke. This dude has 63 yards receiving in all 3 Bills losses, their last 3 playoff losses combined. And again, not all Stefon there, folks. I get it. Kansas City 2021, essentially, he was a decoy because they were just leaving Gabe Davis alone. Gabe Davis had 200 some yards and 4 touchdowns. So I'm fine with Stefon not putting up numbers that day. I get it. And in 2022, when they got beat up by Cincinnati, I really don't put that on Stefon Diggs because I thought Josh Allen was absolutely terrible. Maybe the worst player on the team. There were a lot of candidates that game. But this past year, opportunities were there. The drop at the end of the game, or not the end of the game, but on their final drive, a deep ball probably goes for a touchdown. Just it seems like Stefon Diggs seems to have his worst productive games anyway in the playoffs. So I think it's at least a fair and reasonable discussion to ask, is Stefon Diggs still a dependable number one wide receiver with this football team? And as I think about it, I feel like here's my answer. I don't know. And I don't know that it matters that much with this offense. Look, when Josh Allen was on the come up, it mattered a lot more because, you had Stefon Diggs and you had Beasley, you had Brown, but there were a lot of times where it was just all about Josh Allen was just always going to go to Stefon Diggs to a point where at times he would force the football to him. I get that. But this team has kind of evolved, and especially under Joe Brady, it just feels like a more balanced team. I don't know that having a true number one receiver really even matters all that much at this point with this football team, at least not right now. Because again, they're going to run the football hopefully effectively, and I think they're going to run it more in 2024 than they did last year. They want to run the football. Lord knows Sean McDermott wants to run the football. You use a first-round pick on a tight end who had in a tremendous rookie season, you got to feel that he's going to continue to ascend. Again, I've talked about Khalil Shakir. I really, really like what I saw from him in the back half of last season. In fact, there were times where I thought he was more dependable than Stefon Diggs. So you got him. They're probably going to draft another receiver too. And then they signed Curtis Samuel. You know he's going to have a role with this football team. And James Cook gets the ball out of the backfield. And Josh Allen likes to run the football. So my point is this. Does Stefon Diggs need to have 8 catches for 115 yards and a touchdown most games for the Bills offense to still be really, really good? I really don't think so. I don't know. So I don't know that it matters with this offense. Like I said, just a lot of guys emerging. Josh with his legs running the football. I do think they're going to draft a wide receiver, but I don't necessarily think they're going to do that at 28, which not long ago, and by not long ago, I mean weeks or maybe even days ago, I would have called it a lock where the Bills took somebody at 28. I don't feel that way as of right now. In fact, I'm not even sure they're going to take a wide receiver in round 2 either. They might not take one until round 3. And it wouldn't stun me. And I just think that's because they have straight up bigger needs right now on this football team. I feel like the Buffalo Bills, when it comes to catching the ball and the passing game, I feel like this could be a number one. You know, you have running back by committees all over the league. This could be a passing game where the number one receiver any given Sunday is by committee. So I don't think you're getting 2020 Stefon Diggs anymore. I think the 4 consecutive years of catching at least 100 passes may end, but he's also not some bummy ass dude off the street either. Like, I don't think he's fallen off a cliff. So I guess to answer the question, as things stand right now, is he still your number one receiver? Yeah, he's still your number one receiver. Does it matter as much now, or does it matter as much with the Buffalo Bills as it might matter with another team, like, say, the New York Jets or the New England Patriots or the Vegas Raiders, like with Devontae Adams? Does it matter if he's a true, legitimate number one receiver? I don't think it matters quite that much in Buffalo. But to say that there's zero concern about Stefon Diggs at 31 years old, and only he really truly knows where he, what his present and future, what he wants it to be, there's concerns. I mean, you'd be putting your head in the sand if you said there were none. But anyway, I'm not all that concerned. One more before we get to the break here. How much, and this is another question here, how much can Von Miller be trusted at this point to produce? Because Von Miller was essentially, after returning from the ACL in London last season, he was essentially useless. 257 snaps, did nothing with him. I think he had 5 tackles for the season. Didn't matter that much though last year. It really didn't. And the reason why is because the Bills signed Leonard Floyd, and Leonard Floyd was great for the Bills last year. I mean, he gave them 10.5 sacks. He basically had the type of season that you would hope a healthy Von Miller would give for you at this point of his career. But this is concerning. They don't have that this time around, not as of right now anyway, because Leonard Floyd signed a 2-year, $20 million deal, and he went off to San Francisco. Now, they re-signed A.J. Epinesa. That's good. But I don't think A.J. Epinesa is going to ever be that double-digit sack guy. He is a strong, reliable third defensive end. He's had 6.5 sacks both of his last 2 seasons. 5 sacks to 8 or 9 sacks kind of feels like what the window is for an A.J. Epinesa. A guy who also, he'll pick a pass off or two. He'll defend a pass. He'll find a fumble. He'll force a couple turnovers. I like him as a player, but he's not Leonard Floyd. He's not that get after the quarterback type of guy. You kind of feel like with Floyd gone, you look at this roster right now, it needs to be Von Miller. And Von Miller is 35 years old, man. Basically, he took a pay cut to stay here this season. I thought the Bills might try to sign a Leonard Floyd type in free agency, but again, to this point, at least they haven't done it. There's still a handful of decent potential names out there in free agency. Carl Lawson is one, Bud Dupree, Derek Barnett. I like the idea of Derek Barnett. Might cost some money though. Jadeveon Clowney. So there's guys out there. Many of them past their prime at this point, but there's still some guys that are out there. I feel like this is a position that the Bills could address early in the draft, maybe as early as round 1 too. And I know that makes fans cringe, the thought of Brandon Beane taking another defensive end in round 1, especially after as much as they have invested in defensive end during the Brandon Beane era. We mentioned A.J. Epinesa. They took Greg Rizzo in the first round. They took Boogie Basham the same year in the second round. but you got to keep doing it to get it right because it's too important of a position. You need to get somebody who's going to be hopefully an all-around defensive end, but at the very least, somebody who can effectively get after the quarterback, man. You got to do something because as things stand right now, you have Greg Rousseau, you have AJ Epinesa, and you have 35-year-old Von Miller. That's it. I will say one thing, though, for Vaughn. To me, this was a silver lining, at least. I don't know about you guys, but to me, it was. I actually liked the way he looked in the playoffs, and I especially liked the way he looked in the Kansas City game. So, based on that game, I still feel like there's some juice left. Is he going to get 13 to 15 sacks for the Bills this year? I certainly wouldn't bet on that. But I also, again, if I'm going to go based on what he did in Kansas City, or I should say against Kansas City, I still have some hope. But they're absolutely going to have to address defensive end further, probably early in the draft at this point, because it's definitely a question mark. I'm going to take a quick break, come right back, and then I got a few more for you. Biggest Buffalo Bills question marks as things stand right now. All right, we're back here talking about the Buffalo Bills' biggest question marks right now. We hit on Stefon Diggs. We hit on Von Miller. Got 3 more to go. For me, the next one is, can Connor McGovern get it done at center? You know, there are lots of cuts, lots of moves that have happened over the past couple weeks. I sort of feel like most of them, at least to some extent, we saw coming. But even 2 weeks or so later, Mitch Morse still feels like that lone surprise to me. I'm still personally a little bit borderline shocked that the Bills parted ways with Mitch Morse, a clear casual, or I should say salary cap casualty. I thought maybe he would get a rework deal, something like that, maybe even potentially take a pay cut like Vaughn did, like Dawson Knox has, but the Bills completely moved on for him, and they've already announced, well, they didn't announce, but Tim Graham reported, which, by the way, Tim Graham also has a really good story. In fact, today being Tuesday in The Athletic, he had a sit-down conversation with Connor McGovern about playing center. Highly recommend checking that out. But anyway, he's going to center unless something drastic happens with the draft. But Connor McGovern's only played 100 snaps in the NFL at center. Now, he did play center plenty at Penn State. I guess I'm a little bit confused, man, because throughout his career, when you look at the grades, you read about him, you listen to other people talk about him, you go to like PFF, you look at all, the run blocking grades, the pass blocking grades. Connor McGovern's not been a very good run blocker at all. I feel like he'll have trouble with the bigger guys in the middle, just like Morse did in the run blocking game. I do have faith in Aaron Kromer. I think he's an excellent coach, and I think he has a voice in the room with Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane. I don't know, but I don't think that Brandon Beane signs off, or I should say Brandon Beane releases Mitch Morse without Aaron Kromer to at least some extent kind of signing off on that. Just the way I feel. You look at the pass blocking grades, this guy's been a borderline elite pass blocking guard throughout his career. He had a 74.2 pass blocking grade last year, but again, just a 48.5 run blocking grade. But again, I'm going to trust Eric Kromer here. One thing I will say about Mitch Morse, or I should say about Connor McGovern, is he's significantly bigger than Mitch Morse at center. They're around the same height. I think McGovern's like maybe an inch taller. I think maybe an inch. But he weighs like 25 pounds more than Mitch Morse did. Mitch Morse played at like 305 last year. I just read that in Tim's story, whereas Connor's up like around 328. So he's going to be surely one of the bigger centers actually in the league. Now, all that said, this is a question mark because, again, he has not played a lot of snaps, not in the NFL at center. And it's also a question mark to me because one of the biggest strengths last year, the low-key strength maybe of the Buffalo Bills, was the stability and the continuity of their offensive line. This last year was far and away the best offensive line Josh Allen has ever had throughout his Bills career. And you had 5 guys that started all 17 games together, all playing the same position and taking almost all the snaps for the entire season. So again, a little befuddled, a little confused to break that up. And I definitely think at least a question mark, at least still proven otherwise, with Connor McGovern at center. And one last point, too, I want to say. I don't know that it's necessarily, I mean, it probably is, but I don't know that it's a formality that this is going to be what happens in week 1, because this is what it is right now. Like, there's a couple guys in the draft. Jackson Powers Johnson, dude is a stud center from Oregon. If he were available late in the first round, I mean, even with the Bills having bigger needs per se on the defensive line, I wouldn't be stunned to see them take Jackson Powers Johnson, because again, he is a day one starter stud. And going to get a guy like that and locking him up for 5 years when you got Torrance now for another 4 years on a rookie deal, you just got Deion Dawkins extended. I strongly suspect that Spencer Brown will be an extension candidate at some point this summer, or maybe during the season. You want to lock up your offensive line long term. That could be a move that I really like. So he's a pretty big name out there, Jackson Powers Johnson, that I would be interested in. And I wouldn't sleep on Zach Frazier either. There's another center from West Virginia. So center, I think, could at least be in play at 28, despite what they're saying right now, despite the presumption that Connor McGovern is locked in with Penn at center. I would still say he's a center, but maybe write that in pencil and not Penn. So anyway, 2 more to go here. Defensive tech, and again, these aren't in order, because if these were in order, by the way, this one right here would be my personal biggest question mark about the Buffalo Bills, and that's their defensive tackle depth. And by defensive tackle depth, I mean that shit is pretty much non-existent. There is none. There's none. I feel like this goes under the radar way too much. Although you're starting to see more and more people talk about it. You're starting to see more people shift, experts shifting their mock draft strategies. You're starting to see more fans understand that you got to have depth at this position. Last year, to me, I thought the defensive tackle depth behind Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones borderline sucked. I felt like it stuck out like a sore thumb. When Ed was out or Daquan was hurt or out, either of them were out for whatever reasons, the other dude stunk, man. All right, let's just be real here. Tim Settle stunk. Jordan Phillips would make a play here and there, and then he'd whiff on a play here and there. He'd get 2 or 3 penalties for every play that he made. Sorry, but I'm just saying what it is, man. Poona Ford was a guy that we were really hopeful on. A lot of people were pretty high on. Some smart football people were pretty high on when they signed Poona Ford, and he did pretty much 0 for the Bills last year. The highlight of his season was a block on a punter on the Deontay Hardy punt return against Miami in the finale. Then Linval Joseph, they got him off his couch. Quite frankly, he could have stayed there because he really didn't do anything. And the sad part is that's better than what they have right now. I go back to Tim Settle too. But honestly, I think about the best thing Tim Settle did in his 2 years with the Buffalo Bills. And I'm not a Tim Settle. I don't want to be a Tim Settle hater. I like the guy. He's a good dude. But I remember him coming from Washington, and I'm like, I heard it time and time again. Stuck behind 2 stud tackles in Washington. Dude just waited for his opportunity. Well, he had his opportunity. And I'm going to tell you right now about the best thing Tim Settle did in his 2 years with the Buffalo Bills is go on in the free agent market this past week, get himself a $3 million per year deal with the Houston Texans, because that gets the Bills likely a 7th round comp pick next year. That's it. Because he didn't do really anything on the football field that was beneficial to the Buffalo Bills, and neither did any of the backups behind Ed and Daquan. So I would argue at this point, probably the current biggest need on this football team, even if you like the starters, if you like both starters, and by the way, both of them, to be fair, as good as they are, have question marks for different reasons. DaQuan Jones has question marks because he's 32 years old, because he had a torn pec last year. He's missed some games. So you have to worry about him with his age, his health. Is he going to be somebody who is going to be consistently reliable to go out there for 17 weeks and play at the level that we know he can? Because we saw it for the first month of the season last year. And then you got Ed Oliver. And I'm sorry, I'm going to keep beating this dead horse until he does something different. But this guy is a regular season dynamo. He was one of the best players on the football team last year in the regular season, which is great. But you know what's not great? Ed Oliver taking the playoffs off. 2 straight years in elimination games, he has done absolutely zero. And I go back 2 years ago to the Cincy game. They're missing 3 starters on that line. It meant nothing. This past year against the Chiefs, Ed Oliver couldn't do a thing. So these are their 2 good players, and they have question marks at times for different reasons. But all in all, I'll roll with that, Oliver. I'll roll with DaQuan Jones, and I'll be pretty happy about that. But you got to get players behind them. And the weird thing is, there's barely shit right now in free agency when it comes to that position. Calais Campbell's like 10,000 years old, but he can still play well. He played well in Atlanta last year. He can give you 25 to 35, maybe 40% of snaps. I don't know, Tier Tart, maybe he's out there. Austin Johnson, perhaps. There's just not a lot out there, man. Where the depth on this team last year was not good enough, and now they have really none. So I'm getting to a point where I'm nearly willing to bet that, forget about just one. I feel like 2 of the first 4 picks for the Buffalo Bills in the draft this year very well might be defensive tackles. Daniel Jeremiah at NFL.com, one of the best college football NFL draft experts out there today. He dropped the mock on Tuesday, and he had who the hell was it? Jerzon Newton was his mock pick to the Buffalo Bills, defensive tackle out of Illinois. I'd be all about that at this point. He also, in his write-up, mentioned, instead of mentioning receivers or safeties, he mentioned other defensive tackles. Braden Fisk from Florida State was one. Chris Jenkins from Michigan was the other as guys to watch. Again, you got to consider it. You know, I had my buddy tell me, we were talking in DMs earlier, and he says, you know, taking defensive tackles early, because I told him, I said, my take is, I think the Bills could take 2 defensive tackles in the first 3 to 4 rounds. And he says, well, that's not going to go over well with fans. I'm like, okay, you know what else ain't going to go over well? Eli Anku being your top option right now behind Ed Oliver and DaQuan Jones. That's just what it is. One last note, too, with this position. I've been saying it now a couple times on the show, a lot of my social media platforms. I've been saying it for like a month. I still feel like Brandon Beane at some point is going to make a trade. I think he's going to trade a pick, maybe a couple picks for a player, a good player somewhere that maybe is on more of a cost-controlled, friendly team contract. And I'm starting to think that defensive tackle could be that position. Because again, the vets, they're just not out there. There's not good free agents at this point, man. They mostly suck. Before I get to the last one, real quick here, I want to give honorable mention to safety position. I'm tempted to list this top 5, but I'm confident enough that they're going to address this properly. Right now, of course, they re-signed Taylor Rapp. They re-signed Cam Lewis. As of today, at least, those are your starters. I do think Taylor Rapp is going to remain the starter. I think he's your Jordan Poyer replacement. I don't think Cam Lewis, ideally, is going to be the guy that they have start. Mike Edwards of the Kansas City Chiefs was in Buffalo for a visit shortly before I started taping this on Tuesday. We'll see how that happens. Julian Blackman from Indianapolis. He was in town on Monday. That's a guy I'd really like. In fact, I would like either of those. Give me either of those guys. Give me Quadri Diggs. I'd be happy with any of them. Of course, like everyone else, I'd love Justin Simmons. Just not sure that the money and his age are going to work out with what Sean's looking to do. But anyway, my point was this. When it comes to the safeties, why I don't have them in like my top 5 is because I unequivocally trust Sean McDermott when it comes to what he's going to do with his safeties. If there's one thing Sean McDermott has done a great job of throughout his entire career, before Buffalo, before he being a head coach, is he's always gotten good play out of his safeties. So not that worried about it. Not enough to make it a top 6 Bills burning questions instead of just a top 5. But anyway, the last one, I feel this is obvious. Maybe you don't. But keeping Josh Allen healthy for a full season, that's always, as long as he's playing in the NFL, as long as he's the Buffalo Bills quarterback, that's always going to be a big question mark. It's incredible to me that this guy keeps playing every game. You don't miss no games. And he does it each season with playing an absolutely nutty style of football. He takes a beating out there. I mean, he's flirted with trouble the last few years. He's had elbow issues, shoulders getting banged up, but he hasn't missed a game because of it. He's just, probably one of the greatest things you could say about Josh Allen for all of his skills, all his talents, is this dude is just incredibly durable, insanely durable and reliable. But man, you got to worry that can only last for so long, right? And it can only last, unless you're Brett Favre, I guess, for all those years, it can only last for so long. Starting last year with the Philly game and going through the playoffs, Josh Allen ran the football 75 times. 75 times. That's an awful lot for a quarterback. 75 times. Ran about 47 times in his first 10 games. And he runs the ball more because, and especially in the back half of the season, because it was effective and it was needed. That brought another element to the Bills' offense that they did not have earlier in the season when Ken Dorsey was the coordinator. Now, was that Ken Dorsey saying, Josh, you ain't running the football? Was that Sean McDermott saying, I don't want my quarterback running the football often early in the season? I want to save him for the stretch? We don't know that. But what I do know is that you add all that up, man, that's a lot of runs. That is a lot of hits on your quarterback. And as great as Josh is at running the football, make no mistake about it, he's great. You can't take that out of his game. You can never take that out of his game. But I'm sure Sean McDermott wants to limit it. I think he consciously tried to do it at the beginning of last season. He might do it again this year too. The key is him doing that well makes the offense better. It's an element that the defense has to defend that is just so hard to do. But, last year it wasn't as good when he wasn't running the football. So, again, that comes with a risk. You're going to run your quarterback often. You're going to run him on design sweeps. You're going to have him scramble. You're going to have him rolling out and buying time in the pocket. You're going to have him pump faking, getting guys in the air. You're going to have him trying to run through guys to get a first down, a key first down in the game. No matter how big, no matter how strong Josh Allen is, that's a risk. So you have to say, again, each and every year for as long as Josh Allen's the quarterback, it's a question mark. You cannot call it a given that Josh Allen is going to be able to stay healthy. So to me, that's a very important question mark right now with the Bills. Can you keep Josh Allen healthy? I guess more specifically, you want to say, if you want to frame this the right way here to conclude, I would say, can you find a way for your offense to be as effective as it could possibly be, or as good as it was last year for the most part down the stretch? Can you do that while limiting the amount of carries, design carries that Josh Allen has, and the amount of hits that he's got to take? Because again, every single lick that man is taking, you're playing with fire. So anyway, all right, that's going to do it for this episode. Again, our 5 biggest Buffalo Bills burning questions as things stand right now, at least. Could change. Hopefully it will over the next couple weeks. Certainly by the time the draft rolls around. Going to be back with a new episode tomorrow. I'm going to be joined by Buffalo Bills reporter Alex Brasky out of Batavia. We'll talk about some of these points. and free agency, draft prospects, plenty more coming up with Alex Bresky right on the show here tomorrow. Talk to you then, guys.